The image is so familiar it has become an archetype. A woman stands beside her husband, her posture a study in quiet support, her expression a carefully curated landscape of faith and fortitude. This was Anna Duggar. For over a decade, we watched her navigate the relentless storms of one of America's most televised families, her identity seemingly inextricable from the man beside her, from the last name she carried, from the profound public shame he brought upon her and their children. The scandals were seismic, the legal battles were public spectacles, and through it all, there she was. A portrait of steadfastness, or perhaps, in the eyes of many, a portrait of something more perplexing. We analyzed her every micro-expression, debated her inner life on forums, and wondered with a frustrated fascination, why does she stay? Then came the verdict. Then came the sentence. Then came the reality of a federal prison cell and a release date measured not in months, but in years stretching toward a distant decade. The universe, it seemed, had made the decision for her. The path was agonizingly clear, and yet it was a path still paved with impossible choices. And then, quietly, the news began to filter out. Anna Duggar was making moves. Legal moves. Financial moves. Subtle, but significant shifts in the scaffolding of her life. She wasn't just waiting. She was deciding. This is not a story about a scandal. We have relitigated those details until they have lost all shape. This is not even a story about a crime, for the courts have spoken. This is a story about what happens in the long, quiet shadow after the courtroom empties and the headlines fade. This is the story of an emotional calculus so private, so burdened, that we can only observe its outward manifestations and try to understand the tectonic shifts happening beneath the surface. Anna Duggar's recent decisions are not about shocking anyone. They are, perhaps, the first fragile expressions of a self that has been buried for a very, very long time. They are not a rebellion, but a recalibration. And to understand why they feel so profound, we have to step back and look at the cage she was built to inhabit, not from the outside in, but from the inside out. From the very beginning, Anna's identity was not her own. She entered the public eye as Joshua Duggar's bride, a courtship story fit for a fairy tale within the specific, rigid cosmology of the IBLP, the Institute in Basic Life Principles. Her value was derived. A helpmeet. A keeper of the home. A bearer of children. Her story was a chapter in the larger Duggar narrative of faith, family, and conservative values. The television show, 19 Kids and Counting, presented this world as a harmonious, if eccentric, ideal. Anna was a supporting character in a sprawling ensemble, her role defined by cheerful submission and prolific motherhood. The framework of her entire existence, her spiritual understanding, her social circle, her economic reality, her very sense of purpose, was constructed within and reinforced by this singular system. To question her role was not merely to disagree with her husband, it was to risk her standing with her community, her family support, and her understanding of divine order. This is the first and most critical piece of context. Her steadfastness was not just personal loyalty, it was systemic survival. Then, the first rupture. The initial scandals regarding Josh's past misconduct were a tremor, but the family's framework held. The narrative of repentance, forgiveness, and moving forward was deployed. Anna stood by him, a decision painted as the ultimate testament of wifely and Christian duty. But the earthquake was still to come. The Ashley Madison leak. The allegations of inappropriate behavior. And finally, the arrest for possession of abhorrent material. This was different. This was not a past mistake to be forgiven within the church. This was a federal crime with a victimization so severe it shattered the family's ability to control the narrative. The legal system, a secular, uncompromising authority, had taken the reins. Josh Duggar was no longer just a wayward husband. He was a federal inmate. And here, Anna was presented with a paradox of catastrophic proportions. The very system that taught her that her worth was in standing by her man, that divorce was a sin except in the most extreme circumstances, that her calling was to be the glue that held the family together through trial. That same system had no blueprint for this. Federal prison for a crime of this nature existed outside the script. The familiar tools, counseling, accountability partners, renewed faith, were meaningless against a 12-year sentence. The framework, for the first time, had a crack so large it could not be plastered over. She was left standing in the rubble of the life she was promised, holding the lives of 7 children, with a playbook that had suddenly, and terrifyingly, blank pages. This is where the quiet decisions begin. They're not announced on social media with defiant captions. They're found in court documents and property records. The selling of assets tied solely to Josh. The establishment of more direct, independent control over aspects of her life and the children's lives. The subtle but noticeable physical and emotional distance from the epicenter of the Duggar compound. These are not the actions of someone making a dramatic, clean break. They are the meticulous, careful movements of someone dismantling a web, one silken thread at a time, knowing that one wrong pull could bring the whole structure down upon her and her children. Let's talk about what this means. Because on one level, it is profoundly practical. She is the sole present parent to 7 young children. Their well-being, their stability, their financial security, their emotional health, it all rests on her. To navigate that reality requires a level of operational autonomy she has never needed to exercise before. Every bill paid, every doctor's visit scheduled, every emotional crisis soothed, is a lesson in a self-reliance she was never taught to cultivate. This practical survival is, in itself, a transformative force. You cannot be the passive helpmate when you are the only one making the decisions. The very act of survival is rewriting her identity. But on a deeper, more emotional level, these decisions represent something even more significant, the slow, painful birth of a personal boundary. For years, Anna's life was a study in permeability. Her feelings, her reputation, her body, her story, all were permeable to Josh's actions, to the family's narrative, to the public's judgment. Her emotional state was public property. Her forgiveness was a necessary plot point. Her pain was a topic for public debate. The federal sentence, in its brutal finality, may have built the first solid wall she has ever been allowed. He is gone, physically, for a period of time that is longer than her entire courtship and marriage combined. For the first time, his presence, his daily influence, his immediate needs, are not the central organizing principle of her life. The chaos he generated has been replaced by a terrible, hollow quiet. And in that quiet, she might just be able to hear her own thoughts. This is the core of the emotional decision. It is not necessarily a decision to leave him, legally or spiritually. It may, in fact, be a decision to stay in name. The decision is far more subtle and more revolutionary. It is the decision to exist as a separate entity. To make a choice that prioritizes the practical and emotional survival of herself and her children as they are now, not as characters in a story of redemption waiting for the final chapter. It is the decision to build a present-tense life in the absence of a future she can envision. That may look like selling a property. It may look like a quieter Christmas. It may look like a weary, hesitant smile in a photo with her children that doesn't seem to be performing for an unseen audience. It looks like a person, for the first time, casting a shadow that is her own. We, the viewers, the gossipers, the analysts, we look for the grand gesture. We want the press conference, the explosive interview, the clear signal of liberation or condemnation. We're conditioned by the very reality TV landscape the Duggars helped create to expect a climax. But real life, especially real life forged in trauma and high-control environments, rarely provides one. Transformation is not a montage set to inspiring music. It is a slow accretion of tiny, seemingly insignificant choices made in the dark when no one is watching. It is the internal permission to feel anger, or exhaustion, or a longing for simplicity, without immediately translating it into a statement of faith. It is the terrifying realization that you are capable of handling things you were told you could never handle alone. Anna Duggar's emotional decision is not one moment. It is the cumulative weight of 1,000 silent moments of adjustment. It is the decision, each day, to inhabit the reality in front of her rather than the story she was given. It is the decision to build a life in the waiting room of a 12-year sentence. The woman who emerges from this period will not be the girl who married Josh Duggar, nor will she be the stoic wife who stood by him through scandal. She will be something else entirely, a person forged by necessity, defined by resilience she never asked for, and navigating a world far wider and more complex than the one she was raised to believe was the entire universe. So, the next time you see a headline about Anna Duggar or a grainy photo of her running errands, resist the easy judgment. You are not looking at a victim or a martyr or an enigma. You are looking at a work in progress, a slow-motion evolution happening in real time. You are watching a human being learn, against every lesson she was ever taught, how to hold her own shape. And in the end, that may be the most quietly shocking and the most profoundly human story of them all. We often talk about prison in terms of confinement, of a life put on pause. The inmate is the one doing the time, their world shrunk to a cell, their existence suspended by concrete and razor wire. But there is another sentence being served, one without a formal verdict or a release date. It's served in the sprawling, quiet spaces of a too-big house, in the eerie stillness of a king-sized bed, in the relentless, solo rhythm of parenting 7 children who ask questions with no good answers. This is the parallel sentence of Anna Duggar. While Josh inhabits a physical cage of his own making, Anna navigates a labyrinth of a different kind, a labyrinth of memory, of public perception, of a future that is both terrifyingly blank and rigidly prescribed. Her prison is built not of bars, but of echoes. Consider the architecture of her daily life. Every room, every photograph, every family ritual is a potential trigger. A child's laugh that echoes his. A mannerism picked up from a father they cannot see. A birthday, a holiday, a first day of school, each milestone is a double exposure. It is the celebration in front of her, and it is the ghost of the celebration that was supposed to be, the one where the family was whole and the story was still intact. Her prison is a house of mirrors, each reflection showing a distorted version of a past she can't reclaim and a future she can't envision. The sentence here is one of relentless, psychological presence and absence. He is gone, and yet he is inescapable. His actions are the foundational crack in the floorboards of her children's lives. His name is their name. His legacy is their burden to untangle and hers to manage. This is a form of time that does not progress in a linear fashion. It spirals, revisiting the same wounds with every news cycle, every well-meaning but painful question from a child, every glance from a stranger in the grocery store. And then there is the prison of narrative. Anna is trapped between 2 powerful, competing storylines. The first is the narrative of her community and, to a large extent, her own initial conditioning, the long-suffering, faithful wife. The Proverbs 31 woman who does him good all the days of his life. In this story, her steadfastness is her highest virtue, a testament to a love that bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. This narrative offers a familiar, if agonizing, script. It provides a clear identity, the martyr, the faithful remnant. It connects her to a system that, while fractured, still offers a form of belonging and a heavenly reward for earthly suffering. To step outside of this narrative is to risk spiritual and social exile, to become a question mark to the very people who form her support structure. But pressing in from the other side is the modern, secular narrative championed by the public and media, the empowered woman who walks away. This script calls for a breaking of chains, a public reclaiming of self, a definitive divorce filing that serves as a mic-drop moment of liberation. In this story, her staying is seen as pathological, a failure of feminist consciousness, a form of brainwashing. This narrative offers a different kind of virtue, independence, strength, self-love. It promises the admiration, or, more likely, the relieved approval, of the wider world watching her story unfold like a limited series. Anna is in a narrative prison because she can fulfill neither story completely, and she is damned by each side for not choosing theirs. If she stays, she is a fool to the outside world. If she leaves, she is an apostate to her inner circle. Her emotional decision, then, is not a binary choice between these 2 plots. It is something far more nuanced and exhausting. It is the daily labor of building a third narrative, one for which there is no template. It is the story of a woman trying to find a path that honors the faith that is the bedrock of her identity, while also honoring the survival instincts screaming within her. It is a story that may look like staying, but feels, internally, like a profound and painful renegotiation of what staying even means when the object of your commitment is physically removed for over a decade. Is she standing by her man, or is she simply standing? Is she waiting, or is she finally, quietly living? This brings us to the most poignant prison of all, the prison of her children's eyes. They are the living, breathing conduits between these two worlds, the insular, conservative world of their upbringing and the harsh, public reality of their father's crimes. Anna's sentence is to be the translator, the buffer, the emotional filter for this unimaginable dissonance. How does she explain the unexplainable in a way that protects their innocence, but doesn't lie? How does she foster a relationship with a father who is both theirs and a monster, within the bounds set by courts and therapists? Every parenting decision is a high-wire act over an abyss of potential trauma. Her love for them is the one pure, unassailable thing in her life, and yet that very love traps her in a constant state of hypervigilance and impossible choice. She is serving a sentence of perpetual guardianship, not just of their bodies and schedules, but of their fragile understandings of love, trust, and justice. So, when we speak of Anna Duggar's emotional decision, we must understand it not as a single turn of a key, but as the slow, grinding process of learning to breathe within these overlapping prisons. The reported moves, the financial adjustments, the subtle distancing are not escape attempts. They are adjustments to the interior. They are the mental rearranging of furniture in a cell she knows she may occupy for a very long time. They are about creating small pockets of autonomy, moments where the echo fades just enough for her to hear her own voice. She is not digging a tunnel. She is learning how to paint the walls of her confinement with colors of her own choosing. She is finding the cracks where the light, however faint, gets in. In the end, the shocking thing about Anna Duggar's journey is its terrifying normality. Strip away the cameras, the notoriety, the extreme beliefs, and you are left with a human being facing a universal, if magnified, dilemma. How do you rebuild a life when its central pillar has crumbled? How do you hold on to a version of your story when the main character has rewritten the plot in the worst way imaginable? Her prison is an extreme metaphor for the cages many people find themselves in, cages of loyalty, of expectation, of family obligation, of past choices. Her quiet, daily negotiation is a mirror to the private battles fought in countless ordinary lives. We watch her, not for the spectacle, but for the slow unveiling of a profound human truth. Resilience is not a flag waved on the ramparts. It is the quiet, stubborn act of getting out of bed each morning. It is making breakfast for 7 children in a kitchen haunted by ghosts. It is the emotional decision, made fresh every single day, to continue. To endure the parallel sentence. To find a way to serve the time without letting the time completely erase you. That is the real story unfolding in the silence. And it is one that commands not judgment, but a humbled, respectful witness. The conclusion of a story like this defies a neat, satisfying resolution. There is no final scene where the music swells, the camera pulls back, and we're given a clear sense of an ending. For Anna Duggar, and for the millions of spectators who have watched her life unfold like a tragic, slow-motion documentary, the concept of an ending is a luxury that does not exist. We are not approaching a finale, we are suspended in the long, flat expanse of the middle. The climax, the arrests, the trials, the sentencing has passed. What remains is the aftermath, a landscape that is both barren and oddly crowded with the debris of a shattered narrative. To understand the final 5,000 words of this chapter, we must abandon the search for closure and instead learn to read the quiet text of a life being lived in the permanent interim. This is the season of logistical survival elevated to a spiritual practice. Every action, from grocery shopping to parent-teacher conferences, is stripped of its ordinary veneer and infused with a profound weight. Anna is no longer just managing a household. She is single-handedly operating the day-to-day governance of a small nation of wounded hearts. The sheer administrative load is a form of emotional containment. The spreadsheets for budgets, the medical appointment calendars, the chore charts. These are not just tools of organization. They're levees against the flood of chaos. They're a way to impose order on a universe that has proven itself to be fundamentally lawless. In the meticulous planning of a weekly menu, there is a declaration: we will not drown today. This is where theory meets the unglamorous pavement of reality. The grand debates about theology and feminism dissipate in the face of a sick child at 2 a.m. or a broken-down car. Her philosophy is now written in to-do lists and bank statements. Her strength is measured in loads of laundry finished and permission slips signed. This is the unsung epic of her life now, a heroism defined not by dramatic defiance, but by mundane, relentless upkeep. Within this fortress of routine, the children are both the reason for its construction and its most vulnerable points. Each child represents a different chapter in the disintegrating family saga, a different age at which the bomb detonated in their lives. The older ones carry the memories of a different father, a different family dynamic, the whiplash of public shame. The younger ones know him only as a vague, absent figure defined by whispered explanations and a pervasive sadness they can feel but not name. Anna's motherhood is now an exercise in parallel parenting. She is, effectively, a single parent in the present tense, yet she must co-parent with a ghost, with a man whose influence and legal standing persist from behind bars. Every decision about discipline, education, health, and faith must be made with the phantom limb of his paternity twitching in the background. Does she include his opinion? Does she protect them from it? How does she cultivate in them a sense of self that is not entirely poisoned by his name? Her love is the filter through which his legacy must pass, and she must decide, daily, what gets caught in the mesh and what, if anything, is allowed through. It is a terrifying, godlike responsibility undertaken by a woman who has taught her entire life to follow, not to lead from such a desolate frontier. And then there is the internal landscape, the quiet war within Anna's own soul. For years, her emotions were public property, dictated by doctrine and performative expectation. Grief was to be accompanied by scripture. Anger was to be sublimated into prayer. Confusion was to be answered with submission. Now, in the stark solitude of her new reality, those prescribed emotional pathways may no longer suffice. What happens when the well-worn road of forgiveness and steadfastness leads to a cliff's edge overlooking a 12-year abyss? She may be encountering feelings for which her spiritual lexicon has no word. A profound, weary anger not at God, but at the wreckage. A loneliness so vast it feels cosmological. A fear for her children's future that transcends typical worry and enters the realm of existential dread. And perhaps, in fleeting moments stolen in the quiet after the children are asleep, a terrifying, forbidden sense of relief. The relief that the constant crisis management of his presence, his scandals, his needs, has been replaced by the stable, predictable crisis of his absence. To feel that relief would be, in the framework she came from, the ultimate betrayal. So where does that feeling go? It becomes another secret she keeps, another piece of the self growing in the dark. This internal conflict is mirrored in her relationship with the Duggar family system itself. The compound, once a symbol of unified strength and sanctuary, must now feel like a monument to a broken dream. Her in-laws are trapped in their own parallel sentence of shame and defensive protection of their remaining family. Dynamics are fraught. Every interaction is a minefield of unspoken blame, pity, theological disagreement, and shared, unbearable loss. Does she lean into them for support, knowing that support may come with unstated conditions about her loyalty to Josh? Or does she cultivate a cautious distance, building the independence she needs but risking the only tangible, earthly support system she has? It is a fragile, diplomatic dance. She may be finding that family, in the end, is not a fortress, but a collection of individual survivors, each trying to patch their own leaks in the same sinking ship. Her role within it is being rewritten from Josh's wife to something more ambiguous, the keeper of his children, a permanent reminder of the family's greatest failure, and a sister-in-law navigating her own unique path through the shared wreckage. All of this leads to the central, unanswered question that will define the next decade. What is she waiting for? Is she waiting for Josh Duggar? Or is she waiting out his sentence? The distinction is everything. Waiting for him implies an active preservation of the relationship, a mothballing of her life and heart with the expectation that they will be unpacked and used again upon his release. It is a state of suspended animation, where major life decisions are deferred, where emotional growth is stunted, where the present is merely a hallway to a future reunion. Waiting out the sentence is an entirely different psychological project. It is the conscious decision to live a full, present-tense life despite the sentence, to allow herself and her children to grow, change, and heal along a trajectory that is their own. It is accepting that the man who returns and the woman he returns to will be strangers shaped by radically different experiences. It makes the future an open question, rather than a promised restoration. The financial and legal moves we see are the physical evidence of this internal shift. They are the architecture of a life that must function now, in this decade. They are not about preparing for his return. They are about ensuring stability in his absence. This is the quiet, revolutionary core of her emotional decision. It is the decision to inhabit her own life, fully and responsively, in real time. It may not come with a changed relationship status on a form, but it comes with a changed center of gravity within her own soul. The sun of her solar system is no longer a distant, imprisoned star. It is the immediate, demanding, beautiful reality of the children orbiting her and the faint,